this is going to be a video on what I'm going to be doing in class on February 4th. So if you're at home, this is for you. If you're here on February 4th and you just want to listen to me again talk about this stuff, this is for you. So this is really going to be like wrapping up the 1920s unit. We've talked about in the other videos that I put online, we talked about the 1920s versus the 1980s gangs. We talked about Capone. We talked about alcohol. We talked about how Prohibition took place. We talked about the presidents of the 1920s. So we talked about a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna kind of like wrap everything up. There's a few more things in the study guide that I haven't touched on yet. So first of all, let's talk about like the general idea of the 1920s economy. It was a boom. It was this giant because what happened is you have this assembly line production. You have electricity being used. And all this really pushes this idea of consumerism. And the consumerism is just people buying. And one thing that happens is people start buying on credit. And there's really nothing wrong with buying anything on credit as long as you can pay off the debt. Because that's what credit is you're really just buying things on debt, which you're going to pay off later. And with the impending Great Depression, people aren't going to be able to pay off that debt, but we'll get to that later, and it causes blah. So it's consumerism. It's keeping up with the Joneses. You have people like looking at their neighbors and going, hey, we need to have the same type of car, or we need to have the same type of washing machine, or we need to have a radio. And that's not necessarily bad, because people pushing others to buy more things means that those manufacturers can hire people to build those things. It's kind of this wonderful system where consumerism can push this idea of more jobs and the economy can boom. And unfortunately, it wasn't sustainable for a variety of reasons, which I'll talk about in the next unit. But when I come back, let's talk about celebrities. One of the things that we can really relate to from the 1920s is this idea of celebrity. I mean, if you think about this, in our culture today, celebrities are huge. Like, there are students that I can talk to that can name celebrities that they enjoy listening to their music or watching them on TV or their TikTok, whatever. But they can't name like the politician that serves them in the Senate, which is crazy. But that's just the way it's always kind of been. Even my age, it was the same way. Like, I didn't care about politics or anything like that. But back then, celebrities were the thing. You have like Babe Ruth in baseball. You have Lindenberg. So Lindenberg does this crazy flight, right, that gets everyone's attention. So the idea of celebrity becomes this new thing. It's not about just the people that are running the country. It's not about war heroes. It's about the person that can hit the best ball. It's about the person that's doing the craziest feats. And this just takes over the 1920s like culture, is this idea of celebrity. Next, we're talking about the arts. I absolutely love, and it's my personal preference, but I absolutely love the arts and the culture and the music of the 1920s. I didn't. At one time, I absolutely hated 1920 stuff. I just thought it sounded old and it was garbage. I've come to love it. Now, there is a book that you will possibly read in high school that came from the 1920s. And it's called The Great Gatsby. And I had a wonderful teacher that we read this book in their class. And the book, it has so much symbolism to what's going on in the 1920s. It's absolutely amazing. Just understand that colors mean so much in this book. You have the greens, which is like, wealth, but you also have in greed and covet, but you also have the idea of yellow, and that's wealth too, but also death. Like, yellow is like the color of death in this. But anyway, it's a great book that describes like what's going on in the 1920s. You have the up and coming jazz. Jazz is going to be the starting point for so much. Like music, that rock and roll really stems from jazz. The rap that we get today stems from jazz. Is like this weird like focal point that shoots out so many different music genres that we take advantage of today. So although you might not like the sound of jazz, like it really does push the ball down the hill that eventually forms a lot of the music that we listen to, which is just great. You have the idea of the radio, and this influences culture and art because people are listening to shows on the radio. Information is going faster in the 1920s because everybody has radios all over the place. This really like connects us in a way that social media connects us now. It's this new revolutionary way of keeping in contact and getting information to point A to point B. It changes things, and just like social media has changed things now. So you see all these different connections back then that you can see now It's pretty cool. When we get back, we're going to talk about fashion. Here we go. We're going to talk about fashion. Now, for those people that are already in class and that are going to be here next Friday, great. And those people that are out of class for the last few days but are coming back by next Friday, pay attention because we're going to have a 1920s party. We're going to dress up like the 1920s. We're going to dance like the 1920s. And we're going to eat some food like we're in the 1920s. But anyway, let's talk about fashion. So you'll see here in this wonderful picture, I don't know how good I'm showing it to you, but you'll see the men, they're snazzy, they're business suits, they're classy, right? They got the suspenders, they got the tie, they got the fedora going on. Like, this is like the cool mobster look, but it's just a professional mobster look. It's amazing stuff. Then you have the flapper girl. Now, the flapper girl is actually a term that you probably should know, and this basically refers to a young woman of the jazz age, short hair, short hemline, cosmetics, usually a cigarette. No, you cannot bring a cigarette to class. And rode bikes and drove cars. Like, this is down there. Now, here's some like visuals of like what a woman looks like back in the day. The flapper girl mentality. And then there was dance. With all these different types of fashion, there's the dance. And I'm probably going to include a couple of videos on here of dance. But you're going to need to know the Charleston, the waltz, which I'm going to teach you guys some of this in class. But it's the dancing back there was just, it was unique. And you will see it imitated by people today because it had such an impact on the dance community. And just like jazz had on the music community. So you just have so many different things here that happen here in pop culture and just in general the day-to-day life of people. The flapper girl is like this ideal that women can. By the way, back then women get more power because of prohibition. They become more powerful. Yes, you still have this idea of prostitution that limits women's responsibilities, or not limits, but limits their freedoms to a certain degree. But you have this idea where the people are running different things and making money off of or prohibition because they're selling alcohol. It gives women this extra, and it gives them an edge in the way they dress too. They start making unique outfits that kind of fit them that used to be taboo. So it does change the roles of women in society. When I get back, oh boy, Scopes trial, guys, let's do it. This trial made everybody's headlines, like, because we have the radio, so people are listening to the Scopes trial on the radio, and it's like, everybody's like, oh, it's like the TV show of the day, right? It's like the Cobra Kai. It's like the Mandalorian. It's like whatever the show is that you're into, that's the show of the day, right? But it's radio. They're listening to this thing. Long story short, the ACLU sees that there's a law that gets brought up in a state, and it basically says you can't teach evolution, okay? And the ACLU goes, hey, you know what? Maybe like get a teacher to teach this, and we'll defend them, right? And it happens. Basically, it's a small town that ends up having a teacher teach it. It's actually a guy that's like a football coach most of the time. He doesn't even teach science that much. But it doesn't really matter. He teaches evolution. He's brought to court, or he's reprimanded, and then he sues because he thought he was unjustly reprimanded. So the ACLU goes in and defends him, right? And you have this competing ideology of how to read the Bible is really what's happening here. That's what's going on in this court case. It's really not about evolution. How you know it's not about evolution is the judge himself does not allow any experts to actually talk about evolution. He says, nope, not happening in my court. So like it's not about evolution. It really turns into this idea of Bible study in a court case. And you have the idea of modernism versus fundamentalism. And these are terms that you need to know. So modernism is a liberal with a B view of the Bible, and then fundamentalism is a literal view of the Bible with a T. And this kind of comes head to head with the two lawyers. So one of the lawyers is William Jennings Bryan, and he's like the creationism. He's the person that's basically saying that he doesn't deserve it. He should not teach evolution in class. And then you have on the evolution side Clarence Darrow, and he's just defending his client, right? And what happens is people are listening to this on the radio, and this is going on for a while. And eventually, since Darrow can't actually bring in evolutionary scientists to teach what evolution is, to tell why it should be taught in science classes, he eventually goes, okay, maybe I'll just have somebody on the stand, who's an expert on the Bible. And he calls the prosecutor, the other lawyer, to take the stand as like, a person, as a witness, if you will, to show that, hey, you read the Bible and you know a lot about the Bible. Why don't you stand up there? And he basically starts grilling him. This is over the radio, just grilling him about different stories of the Bible. And a lot of times, Brian is like, I don't know, or and he starts looking really bad on the radio, like really bad on the radio. But Ryan's like, you know what? I'm gonna have the best closing statement ever. The problem was Darrow knows this, and he doesn't give a closing statement. And by law, if the defense doesn't give a closing statement, the prosecution doesn't give a closing statement, then the defense can't. So the closing statements are thrown out. No more closing statements for this trial. Now, it eventually goes to a higher court, and because it doesn't go the way that the person wanted it to go. But it really is this idea of modernism versus fundamentalism and how that plays a part in society, and how we're going to teach kids and all this other stuff. And eventually, obviously, we teach evolution now because it's based on scientific theories and facts. And by the way, I'm not going to get in a pulpit of what a scientific theory is versus scientific law, because people have a misconception on that. Real long story. A theory is not like a jumping off point to a law. It doesn't go like hypothesis, theory, law. No, that's not how science works at all. It's theories give you an explanation of why, as the laws give you more of the what. But it doesn't really matter. All I know is Scopes trial was an interesting thing. It was like everybody's like, oh, let's listen to this, and that really is kind of the big thing about the 1920s. So we covered up pretty much everything. What you need to do now is I put on the link here a couple things. One, I put a link of a cartoon. So the very first cartoon ever to have sound was a Mickey Mouse cartoon, Steamboat Willie. Okay. Watch it. It's only a few seconds long. You probably have to watch it on a different device because I don't know if I have it approved from the district office yet to watch it. It's not rated R, don't worry. It's a cartoon where he just whistles and stuff. I also put in the links some dance stuff that you should watch for your ability to dance. Okay, it's been fun. It's been real. I'll see you guys on Zoom tomorrow, which would be Friday.